baseball game going on just across the street. There's this other conference happening now as well. So I'm excited to be here for RightsCon. It's my first time coming to a human digital rights event as well. But I thought I would find out whether I could come and talk to technical audience. I'm a techie. I write code. I learned to code a long time ago, so I'm excited to meet you today. So I'm going to spend maybe, let's see, half an hour just telling you a little bit about the project Mastodon, what Ruby's been doing in this thing called the Fediverse. Bit of a history lesson as well, because it goes back nearly 20 years. In fact, 30 years, really. Ruby is 30 years old, right, this year. Yes. So I'm just going to give myself a view of what...
Yeah, actually today is Pat's birthday of Ruby.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah. Yesterday is 24.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, well, that's really, that's even more cool. So I'm going to tell you this little story for half an hour. I'm not from here. I know that I have great English, but please let me know if I'm not making myself clear, or ask a question if you would like me to explain something I'm talking about more carefully. So this is me. I've done a lot of things in my life and my career. I went to university in the 1990s and I studied history.
Oh.
So I taught myself to code before that, actually. And then I got to the end of my education and I really wanted to be in tech. And it was really hard to get a job without any science or math in tech. But I spent then a few years working at the UK Post Office. I learned there a lot of things about Unix and technical infrastructure. I then worked for IBM for 10 years. I did a lot of work with Java and lots of different languages. But I got, during that time, the opportunity to travel, to speak, to learn to be a public speaker, and to meet people and audiences. And then I went to work on something called Cloud Foundry, which is the first time I learned really any Ruby, about 15 years ago.
Cloud Foundry.
Cloud Foundry, it's a cloud platform, a platform as a service. And originally that was written in Ruby. Now, whilst I was there, the company, VMware and Pivotal, rewrote most of it into Go for their own reasons. But I learned a lot about Ruby then. I met Matt for the first time around that time. After that, I worked for a company that doesn't exist anymore. It was called Twitter. It was a really good company, but it's gone. But Twitter was also originally written in Ruby. And after a few years, they rewrote that into microservices in Java and things. But Twitter was a Ruby. Then after that, I had to leave Twitter because everybody got fired. Because crazy man decided to do that. And now I get to work on something I love, which is open source. I've always really loved open source. I think that humans work really well together when we share our ideas. I think that's what open source is about, free sharing of ideas and information. So that's a little bit about me, and you can find out more on my website, my links. This is my Mastodon name, or my Fediverse handle, as we call it. And let me find my mouse pointer because I lost it. It's on that screen. It's on that screen. It should be on my screen. That's what's better. No, I can. So the first thing to say is that I don't write Ruby code every day anymore. I've done it for quite a long time. I get to help people. I'm a developer in developer relationships, to help people with problems in different programming languages, which is exciting, but it means I'm not an expert in very many of them. So I can help people to work with APIs in maybe Python or Ruby or Java, call an API, help them to understand what the problem of the system might be. But I got to talk about Ruby at RubyWorld in Japan in December. I was invited to do a keynote there. I'm not going to repeat that keynote. It's available online if you want to watch it. There's some things in this which are similar, but I wanted to talk to you a bit more about Ruby. So we're going to go through what this thing, the Fediverse, is. It might be a strange word if you haven't heard it at all before, and the history of that. And then we'll talk about Mastodon and Ruby. And then at the end, I'd just like to talk about what the future is, what's new, what's happening now, because Mastodon is nearly 10 years old as a project. So there must be some new Ruby stuff happening, if there is. So what is this thing, the Fediverse? This is a logo. You find it on Wikipedia if you look up the logo for it. The idea is that there's interconnected services. So each of these blobs may be a service of some kind of different colors. They might be different services, and they all talk to one another and they're all connected. So in some ways, this idea of the Fediverse is the opposite of the big centralized social platforms like TikTok or Twitter or Facebook. Okay? You can sometimes hear this called the social web as well. And I think that's a really good name as well, because the Fediverse is based on a standard from the W3C, so the organization that standardizes HTML and all of those related things. And that standard is something called activity path. So Twitter started in 2006 as a thing, as a company. I got my Twitter account in 2007. I was a very early user on Twitter. And it was really exciting back then. Nobody really knew what this was. It was the idea of that was you would send an SMS message originally. It didn't have a mobile app. It came out before the iPhone, which is really hard for me to imagine now, because we've been using these phones, these magical glass devices for so long now. But yeah, and it was this easy way to share what you were doing, right? And it's grown. It's so cool. It's grown a lot. But they were all these centralized systems you can see on the left. So these big, monolithic, centralized server systems that everybody connects to. And that's great, but what happens if that middle bit goes down? Or the country where that middle bit is in elects a dictator who is destroying the government, not thinking of any specific country right now. Well, of course, it could be any country. So it might be great if we could run our own copies. So around the same time, Twitter 2006, by 2008, there were open source alternatives. And those alternatives were not just single servers, right? They would let anybody start a copy, and then those servers would talk to one another. So this is what we call federation. So it's a federated system of multiple servers. And it's really how the web works, right? The web is distributed everywhere. And many sites, you've got multiple instances, you've got load balancing, all of those kinds of things, and that might be global as well. So back in 2008, we have this platform called status.net, which is the logo on the left. Many almost certainly won't remember. And that was a similar thing. Anybody could write what they were doing, micro-blogging. And that had a protocol called OStatus. The platform on the right came out around the same time. It's called Diaspora, and that is still around today. Diaspora is also written in Ruby. Status.net was not written in Ruby originally. A lot of these other things were done in PHP. I'm not going to go through every platform. The next slide will show you lots of boxes, and you can see how this is all kind of evolved through time. But again, let's think about this. So we just said that Ruby's 30 years old. 2006, Twitter started about 20 years ago, 19 years, right? So you've got 30 years ago Ruby, 20 years ago these kind of social networks started, and then immediately people started using Ruby to build them, versions of them, and Twitter itself was in Ruby. And then we get to Mastodon, which I'll get to in a moment. So this is the chart I tried to make, trying to show. This is all open source software, all of these are open source projects. And I wanted to show how these different protocols and things have come through time. And the red boxes are where Ruby comes in. Okay. So if you go back to 2008, I mentioned StatusNet with this protocol with OStatus, again, short sharing protocol. And that was in PHP. There was also another thing called Activity Pub, which sounds similar to Activity Pub. And that's because it was created by the same guy, Evan Programmoon. And that evolved into Activity Pub. Now, when Mastodon first started in 2016, I'll talk about that a bit more in just a moment, that didn't start with Activity Pub, it started with this OStatus protocol. So if you see on the far side, the left side there, we've got this list of Ruby projects. Diaspora, there's a Ruby project called RStatus, which is similar to StatusNet and using Ruby. And then Mastodon was originally OStatus, and then it switched across to Activity Pub a couple of years later in 2018. Well, you see Activity Pub came out in 2018, but Mastodon started in 2016. And then Mastodon's been around 9 years. It's just had its birthday about a week ago for 9 years. So we've gone 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. And Mastodon will be 10 next year. And Ruby's been part of this story, this social story the whole time, which I think I find it really interesting. And we've still got PHP in the picture as well. But of course now, if you're Rubyists in the room, everybody's got a sexy new language for you, right? It's called Rust, Go, something new. That's cool, but Ruby's still getting better, right? We've seen this. I'll show you what the improvements in Ruby have done for Mastodon in the last year. So this is kind of a complicated family tree, but I wanted to share how this has all evolved together and where Ruby fits. And this bit here on the near side to me, we'll talk about at the end. So this is what the latest stuff is. So last year, the last 2 years, a framework for Rails and Ruby called Fediverse, which helps you build Fediverse apps. One of our new projects, Discovery, which I'll tell you about. And then there's this platform, this program called Manyfold, which builds on top of Fediverse. Manyfold is for 3D printing. It's not for driving of 3D printing. It's for managing your models and organizing your catalog. So if you think about now, I'll come back to Manyfold because it comes up later, but I'll explain a bit more. So in 2016, there was this young German programmer, Eugen Rochko, who decided he thought he could make Twitter better, a new version, a different version of Twitter. He didn't really like Twitter at the time, so he thought he could build something. So he decided to build that in Ruby. He chose Ruby. He knew Ruby, right? Why do people start writing a project in a particular language? It's probably because it's a language you already know or you want to learn it, right? But he also really loved Ruby. He says it's very expressive, it's fun, it's very easy to try new things. And with Rails, you've obviously got that framework where you've got that well-known structure. It makes it very easy to create new routes and try new ideas and new APIs. So he started building Mastodon with Ruby and Ruby on Rails. But he didn't start it with this thing called Activity Pub. He started it with this other protocol called OStatus. And then when Activity Pub came out in 2018, he switched the project across to using Activity Pub. And that was really a big point where Mastodon started to grow a lot more, because Activity Pub is it's really a kind of a publish and subscribe protocol between social networking servers, and they can be mixed. They can be different types of servers. They don't all have to be Mastodon. There are different types of microblogging servers. Miski is very popular in Japan, so with Mastodon. There's a photo sharing one that's a bit similar to Instagram. There are video sites similar to YouTube. There's one called PeerTube, which is very great. You can either run your own YouTube instance if you like, or you can have one for your community. So Activity Pub has been a really important part of the growth of Mastodon. Mastodon today is the largest independent server type in the Fediverse, and there's various websites where you can go and find out what the usage is of different types of Fediverse servers, and you'll see Mastodon has got the most users. I'm not showing off about that. It's just that's where we are today. And I would expect that because platforms change, things become more popular. We've seen a lot of people wanting to leave Instagram, so the photo sharing site has become very popular in the Fediverse because people decided actually we don't like giving all our data to them. And Meta's changed its policies at the moment, so people are very concerned about it. And I think that's really what matters to me. I used to work with Twitter. Things changed there. I'm not, but that's happened. But what I have been doing is using Mastodon since 2018 myself, 2018 or 2019 myself, because it's open source. I can see how it works. I can keep a copy of my code. There's no algorithm. And if there was an algorithm, I could see exactly how it worked, and I can understand it for myself. And I think at the moment, the idea of hosting or running services outside of the UK and other countries is extremely interesting to lots of people, especially where I am in Europe. I was at FOSDEM in Europe, in Brussels, a few weeks ago, and people there were very, very concerned about what's happening in the world. Now, this is a diagram I made, and you don't need to zoom in with your eyes to see every dot. This is GitHub have a platform called GitHub Next. So if you go to GitHub Next, they have a lot of different tools, and one of the tools lets you point at a code repository, and then it will build you this kind of diagram. So this is a visualization of Mastodon's code base, Mastodon's server code base this week. What I've done is you'll see that the box says excluded path. So I've excluded spec tests. I've excluded most of the front end code, the React code that's not Ruby. So really, what I wanted to show you here is that this is a well organized, pretty classic Rails project, right? You've got your controllers, your views, your models, a bunch of helpers, libraries in there. Obviously, you've got config as well. So Mastodon is a pretty big Ruby app. It's been going for 9 years. It started off really just with Eugene. Maybe the first 2-3 years, it was really just his project. But if you look at other types of visualization of the growth of the project, you'll find that there are a lot of new contributors over time. So we're a classic Rails app. We use Postgres very heavily, and we use Sidekick, and we're monolithic. I think it's a very well organized code base. It all lives in a single repo here. We do have a few additional services that are part of the platform, which I'll talk about, but especially with this new one, the discovery one. But I don't think it's massively surprising. We're still looking at ways to optimize, we're always looking at ways to optimize performance. But right now, Postgres, Sidekick, Redis, they're good solutions for us. I'll tell you about the scale and size and performance as we go here. So we run 2 of the larger Mastodon instances ourselves. And the reason that we run them as a team, as an organization, is because we wanted to make it easy for people to come to Mastodon and sign up, right? Now, you can choose any Mastodon server you want to sign up, but we have this one called Mastodon.social. We have moderators there who keep things friendly, nice, pleasant. We can make sure that the service is always available. So if somebody wants to sign up straight away, they can get started. One of the cool things about Activity Hub and the Fediverse is that you can move to another place. You can take your network with you, which is not very easy if you try to leave Facebook or another platform. They don't make it easy for you to find your friends in the new place. Originally I was on Mastodon.social, and then a few years ago, I moved to the one I'm on now, which is called Macaw.social, And there's a process you can go through in the settings and just say, I'm moving over there. And what it will do is it will tell all your friends, all the people that follow you and all the ones you're following, and it will rebuild your graph in the new place, which is very cool. So the reason I mention all of this is because we run an instance called Mastodon.social. These are the performance characteristics of Mastodon Social. So we're hitting a large number of requests, really good response times, and we've got very big exciting things, right? We've got significant traffic through there. Now, we have somebody, basically one operator, DevOps person that sort of looks after the services for Mastodon Social. We have another instance called Mastodon.online. That's partly to give us some redundancy from Mastodon Social. Both of our two instances, these two that I'm talking about, always run the latest version of the GitHub code. So these will be beyond the latest general release. Okay? That means that we can quite quickly test to a large audience the effect of a user interface change. So for example, we have just in the last few weeks made it so I think we've made it so that you get prompted if you don't put text description for your images when you create a post on Mastodon Social, and there's a little prompt to remind you to do that, and it means we get feedback from the user. So last year we upgraded to Ruby 3.3, and saw some great improvements because Ruby's performance has improved and got better, and that's great. And as I said to the audience at RubyWorld last month, in December, 2 months ago, thank you as a Ruby community for continuing to focus on performance. And of course, we know that performance doesn't just happen in the core, it also happens in the libraries and everything that goes with your app. So one of the things we try to do is we try to reduce our dependencies on third-party code. So one thing that we're working on at the moment, we've been using the RubyJam for JSON parsing, but we are likely to move in the next release onto the built-in JSON gem, the one that the more standard JSON gem, because that's got much better. Yeah, all of the performance numbers I showed you on that previous slide as well were with wide enabled. I know Ruby 3.4 has now come out. We haven't upgraded to that yet in general use, but what we try to do when we make a new release of Mastodon is we try to support the latest Ruby release that's available then, plus the last couple. So we do want to keep moving forward with Ruby because it helps everybody to move forward. I think something that's more complicated will be our migration to Rails 8, but I know that the team is looking at that. Now, I'm at Whitestone, and we've been talking about, the speakers have been talking about things that I have never thought about in detail, right? They're things I see on the news and think they're somewhere else in the world. And, it's sad, but of course, I'm with a group of people at Whitestone, human and digital rights advocates who are in places in the world where access is difficult, life is challenging, and with changes happening in different countries, it's a really big reminder to me that technology is used everywhere in the world, and it matters, and we need to be thinking about these things, and we need to be thinking about access. So one of the things that I personally care about is making sure that Mastodon is not one big server in the middle, because that doesn't help. Because if somebody, well, we don't plan to sell it, but if somebody did want to buy it and do something different with it, that would be great for a lot of our users. They can move to another server. That's what the open social web is about. We like it. But the point is, we need lots of different servers in different places to maximize availability, diversity, make sure that all of the rules of those servers match the communities and expectations and cultures of the countries where they are. So I looked on a map. There are several different ways of looking for where servers are in the Fediverse. And I found this one on the Fediverse Observer website. Now, these black marks are not all Mastodon. Some of them are, if you zoom in, of course, to Taipei, there's several, there's quite a few of them. But they're not all Mastodon. Some of them are Sharky or Misty or Pixel Fed. Quite a few of them are very small servers, so they're only maybe just for one or two people. But I thought that was, for me, that was interesting to learn that there's a relatively small distribution of them here. Another cool thing about Mastodon and the Fediverse is you can go where your community is. So there's an instance called ruby.social that a lot of Ruby developers or Rubyists join because it's run by people that use Ruby and talk about Ruby. It doesn't matter. It's like sending an email to follow somebody on a different server. So you're not stopped from talking to those other people. But if you join that community, there may be rules that match your interests and expectations. You may know the person that runs your server. I know the person that runs the one I am on, core.social, because I used to work with. So I just wanted to say that Ruby.social is a thing, and of course, Mastodon's a big Ruby app. So we've done the past. I look back 20, 30 years, talked a bit about how the social networking stuff came along. Ruby's been there all along. Mastodon's been a big part of that. Let's talk about what's next. So in the last few years, first of all, the Mastodon project has really changed. So Musk bought Twitter 2.5 years ago. Lots of people joined Mastodon and Fediverse. I joined the team at Mastodon. Other people joined the team at Mastodon. We are in the process of making Mastodon from a single person project into a foundation that can go forward and be around for much longer. So that's exciting. The Fediverse as a whole has grown. It's got a lot of different new services that come along. So I mentioned earlier, I showed you that family tree. The bit down here is all the new things. So there is this RubyJam called Fediverse that makes it easier for you if you want to build activity hub into your app to do that. One of the apps that has done that is an app called Manyfold, which I'll show you in a minute. There's a couple of websites, like I think there's one called Awesome Fediverse, various lists you can go and look at. And I think the last time I looked, there were about 20 different projects that were saying they were using Ruby actively, Fediverse work. And then we have a new one called Fediscovery, which we're introducing this year as well. So I like 3D printing. I bought a little 3D printed Mastodon to show you. It's on the table there with some stickers. And I am not a very good designer of 3D objects. I'm okay at drawing flat slot diagrams. I'm not very good at making 3D objects. I think my brain just doesn't work to it. Mm-hmm. So I collect a lot of other people's stuff that they share. So there are some websites. There's one called Thingiverse. There's one called Printables. There's one called MakerWorld. Usually, the company that makes the printer wants to have a catalog online and share their things. And those websites are usually communities. So you have a user account, and then you can download models and print them on your printer. And then once you've done that, you can leave a rating, and you can leave some comment, and it becomes a social network suddenly. So does something like, well, there's an Amazon app called Goodreads where you can share what you're reading. Lots of people don't like Amazon, so there are some other ones. There's one in the Fediverse, Bookworm, and it's another network for sharing what you're reading, whether you like the book, how far you got into the book, and you can share those things. This is another catalog. So what you do with this is you can run this on your own server or your friend's server. Have this. It looks very, very similar to one of the 3D printing catalogs I mentioned, like Thingiverse, which is a very well-known one. And you can see on the side here, there's a follow button. Now, if this was printables or Thingiverse, I might, if I find a design of these models I like or find useful, I might click follow and then I would get it in my feed. If I click follow on this site, then I can put in my Mastodon account, or follow it from my Mastodon account. And I would see whenever the author's making new models, they would show up as entries in my Mastodon feed. So there's some really cool stuff you can do. Because it's all based on the same protocol, I can see it all in a single feed if I want to. So this is actually, I know the person that wrote this, it's a friend of mine called James, great. But along with many of the projects, the European Union has a fund where they, innovation fund, where they will provide funding to some of these projects. So Manyfold is one that has had a little bit of funding from this EU innovation fund, and it's really cool. It's a nice thing. You can run this locally, keep your own files, collect other files, share what you're doing, and so on. And he's based this on this Fediverse framework. And while he's done that, he's contributed back to the Fediverse framework because he's found issues or he needed new features. Because as we know, that is how open source works. We share and we learn from one another. I mentioned this thing called Fediscovery, which is a short, in English, we sometimes try and smash words together, right? So we had a project name called Fediverse Discovery Provider, and nobody wants to say that. So we just made it Fediscovery. This is another project we had some funding from the European Union for. And these icons are all logos of different Fediverse platforms. So we've got Mastodon, we've got PixelFed, which is a photo sharing site. We've got PeerTube, which is a video sharing site. And I've forgotten what the other one is. So I'm going to need to look that up later. I can't remember what that one is. The problem with having all of your servers in loads of different places is that you don't have a single index of everything. So you can't easily search for stuff. The other thing with the Fediverse is that the Fediverse is being built by people who didn't feel safe or felt rejected by a big tech platform, right? So quite often they may be queer or disabled or come from different backgrounds where they were not happy with the way that the world worked on those big tech platforms. So they often have a strong desire to be very private. So the Fediverse is also very careful to promote opt-in rather than opt-out for your choices as a user. So by default, it's quite hard to find things. You can't easily just search for type a and find out what's happening on Mastodon, because unless somebody uses the hashtag, even if they have, it will only be your Mastodon server. It won't be every Mastodon server. So the idea of Fediscovery is we think it would be great if the users choose to and the operators choose to take part in this search network, they could all contribute to a bigger index that the other instances could then talk to. The other thing this would do is enable this idea of discovering content from other things that are not the same as you. So PeerTube has the idea of a video with comments. We talked about Manyfold. Manyfold has the idea of a model catalog with comments and users, whereas Mastodon has users and posts. So they have slightly different ways of describing the world. So we have hired a person to work with us on this proposal, on this discovery proposal. This is not using Activity Hub directly, it's just adding to the bigger network of the Fediverse. Right, I've been talking for about half an hour, so I told you I would talk about half an hour. If you are interested or if you're curious, if you've never tried these things before, if you just feel like building something new in Ruby, then I've got some ideas for ways to get involved. You could, if you wanted, to run your own Mastodon instance or help a friend to do that. There are loads of great tools for Mastodon. One of my roles working with the developer community is discovering what people have built this week. It's a blog post every month where we share what we're doing on the project, which pull requests we've added, which new features we're working on, when our new releases is due. But I love to find out what people are building on top of Mastodon, because you can do some really fun things. I remember when I got here, there was the Apple TV or the casting too. There's an Apple TV app somebody's built. Probably not written in Ruby. I will admit that. But the idea is you can do that. You can build lots of different things using the API. And yeah, now there's Fedi Rails and there are new things coming along. If you have an idea for something that doesn't exist in the Fediverse yet, a community that might want to integrate or share information over this activity hub protocol from the W3C, then it's a really great way to grow your network. So that is all I wanted to say to you this evening. I'm so delighted to be here in Taipei with you. It's really exciting to be here. Thank you so much for your hospitality and friendliness. I have some stickers for everyone if you want. Yeah, I would love to see you online. Thanks.
Any question？ 大家有什么问题想问的吗？等一下，我可以用吧。
喂，好啊。
Thank you for this very good talk. I have a question about the Fed discovery that you talked about. So I'm very interested in making myself discoverable in Fed discovery.
Okay.
But I hate Zuckerberg crawling my data to Fed discovery. Like is there some mechanism in Fed discovery to punish Zuckerberg?
Yeah, so it doesn't work with crawling. So it works with submissions. So there's a website which describes all of the details much more. It's not based on being the ability to crawl a server to get all your data. For example, whether it's Zuckerberg or something else, Zuckerberg wouldn't be submitting data, right? Wouldn't be taking it. If you were on a Meta platform, they won't be sending that data to Fediscovery. Fediscovery is initially only doing Mastodon. We're working with some other projects in the Fediverse to start to submit some data. We are, at the moment, we just released the Ruby client for it, and we've started to do some testing between our team with their own Mastodon instances. And it's kind of, it's hard for me to explain without showing you loads of diagrams. But if you are on Mastodon and you then set the setting in your user setting to say make you discoverable, what that does by default is it makes you discoverable so that it can be found in the profile directory for your instance, for your Mastodon server. And if your server has search enabled, then you can choose to have your data in search index. That doesn't mean it will end up in Google search index. They could come and crawl. The owners of the search of the instances can set the robots file, which we know lots of people don't bother checking anymore because AI. But in theory, they can be blocked from crawling. The idea of Fediscovery is, maybe I'm getting too excited. Sorry. The idea of Fediscovery is that my instance only knows about the people. My instance only knows about the people on it. from search. So if it wants to find stuff from other instances or non-Mastodon content, it can go and ask the Fediscovery service. The other thing with Fediscovery is it's a search type service, but we have a bigger vision, and that is that we have this idea of something called Fediverse service providers. So Discovery is one service, and we want there to be, if we build Fediscovery, we don't want there to just be one big search provider. We want lots of different ones. It's all about distribution and choice. So we don't want everything in one place, because that would just make us another centralized system, right? What we want to enable is for, let's say, the users on Ruby Social to be able to find commits from Gitty or another Forge software that also has Activity Hub enabled that is relevant to Rubyist stacks. So the Ruby.social instance might opt in to talk to Fediverse Discovery provider, which had a load of Ruby content for discovery and something else. But Mastodon.social might not choose to do that. So the idea is that as well as lots of different Mastodon instances or PixelFed instances, there will be lots of different Fediverse discovery providers, and they would all have slightly different content, and you can choose which ones your server owner can choose which ones to use. It's just about, and it wouldn't enable global discovery still, and I think that's probably good. I think global discovery, the ability to find anyone on the planet and send them bad content is a problem, right? So I think that's not something we want to do. But we may also want to then have a service provider that doesn't do search discovery. It might do content moderation. So it might want to be able to apply labels to particular bad users or bad content. We might have another one that is for caching, because at the moment, the way Activity Hub works, you end up with multiple copies of media in lots of different places. It might be better if you could opt in to say, this is my cache provider, or these 3 service providers are my cache providers. That's a very long answer to your question, which was, I don't want Zuckerberg crawling my data. I don't think that the Fediscovery project should enable
And thank you.
Okay, great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so hi, Olga. So first I want to thank you for this, for like to help with this platform. I run one of the oldest and semi-tech server in Taiwan. Yeah, it's called RubyWorld.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We had
We've heard of it. It's a famous server.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it has about 1,000 data users right now.
Nice.
Kind of okay, I guess. Yeah. So my question is that last year, for context, our server is supposed, our user think of the server is supposed to connect to the VC servers in Japan.
Yeah.
You know, we have much more country related,
Of course.
trend and stuff. And we got hit by 2 very big stakeholders. Yeah, there's some high school students want to promote Discord servers. Yeah, and it's an interesting experience. So I'm wondering, like, so do you the Mastodon roadmap plans to develop some kind of tools to help us to detect and prevent this kind of like very simplistic and naive spam waves. You know, the post and the content and the image is the same with all the things. So it's pretty easy to detect. So, and last year there's this one person core team help develop a script help us to block these posts. Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we have to make the tool more standardized and more formats for us to detect these kind of standard we and to block those instances easier?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for running Dog Zero Social. That's also really cool. Really excited about that. And yes, I remember exactly what you're talking about. There was some weird situation with some youngsters in Japan who decided to create some problems on the internet. And it's one of the challenges of being a very distributed platform with lots of people like yourself running your own servers. I hate to say this, but when I was at Twitter, we had one big server, and we could deal with like all of it, right? So we've done a few things. I think you were referring to my friend Renaud, who wrote the script to find and block some of those that's been removed some of that content. And we've learned it, for sure. So we did a few things. We stopped new server instances being default open signups. If the admin hadn't signed in for too long, then it would switch it to closed signups as well, because we realized people were abandoning instances, and this is how some of this was happening. So we've done some things already, and we have more things on the road. I can't tell you specifically what the line items are on the plan. I can tell you that we mentioned 3 priorities in our blog post in January when we announced that we were going to be setting up the new nonprofit. And from funding we've been given through donors. And one of those is better tools for trust and safety and moderation, and those things being described. The project has grown up. Yeah, right? It's gone from being this project, which is amazing, that Eugene wrote and still contributes heavily to being used everywhere. And it's a wonderful thing. But humans at scale are not always good people. Humans individually are lovely. I love meeting people and learning from them. But somehow we know that when people are online, think that was just very. I want to say that was very childish, and it was very childish, and it was hugely annoying and problematic for us. We've definitely learned from that experience. There is an organisation called IFCAS, you may have heard of, Independent Federated Trust and Safety, that's been around for a year or so. And they just announced they are running out of funding, so they may go away. So what IFCAS was trying to do, has been trying to do, is to create an organisation that had lots of, kind of like a Fediverse discovery provider, kind of like this extra service that could be used by lots of different types of platform, Mastodon, Misty, Pixelped, whatever. The other thing I don't want is for everybody to be using Mastodon, but it makes it difficult for us to stop other projects not taking these things seriously. You see what I mean? So I'm not trying to get rid of the blame here. We could have done better. We could have had the software shaping to stop some of those things from happening. We are not the only instances, so we need this to be everything in Fediverse gets better. We all learn from those types of attacks or mistakes or bad situations, and we all improve our security, and we all improve our tooling for getting rid of that bad content. Thank you for the question. It is something we take seriously. We have it high on our list for this year. We will never solve the problem. It's an arms race, right? We know that people will always try to find ways to find a weak spot, but we can definitely do better.
And I'm waiting on the engineering in this topic. Thank you for your sharing. That's amazing. And I have one question for Austin. This year, because of the AI technology is quite high and trending, so I'm just wondering if Austin currently having for some integration for Austin AI. For example, one of the features I can imagine is the maybe automated moderator.
Yeah.
Mobile moderator now, but I think there could be more potential that AI can do.
Yes, thank you. So, have we got any plans on moderation? So, there's a couple of interesting things. Sorry, any plans on AI, and one of those options could be moderation. So, I think this is an interesting. I have a complicated relationship with the AI technologies personally, because a lot of it is trained on data that was obtained in illegal or non-consensual ways, right? So, however, you can do some very cool things. I use it sometimes to help me with some coding because it's not too different sometimes to the autocomplete you used to get in Visual Studio for answering your method calls, but you always need to check. So, with that said, that's my personal view of AI. I do use it. I feel a bit funny about it sometimes and how it's being used. Eugene and our team as a whole have a view of AI that is not positive. Eugene is a photographer. He loves, I think it said in his Mastodon pro, he loves all things animal. He cares about authenticity and human connection. And that is really, I think, very fundamental to us as a platform. We care about human connection and people talking to one another. So there are several ways we could implement some AI tools or some AI-driven technologies. Moderation is one of them. Some low-level, but it's a very complicated area. We don't currently have plans to do that. Another one I can think of might be image descriptions. So instead of you typing your image description, it would prompt you and say, I think this is an image of a field with some birds. Would you like me to put that, and maybe that would be okay, right? But, we don't want to insert, which I think X has done, I haven't used that platform, like whole generators for crazy image creation. We have policies, I think, on Mastodon Social against, AI generated content like that. So, a small story. I went to San Francisco last year for Google I/O with Eugene, and we met with Google and we talked to them and about Google I/O last year was all about AI. And they said, can we talk to you about any AI features? And we just said, not really. It's not what we're interested in. So I think the answer is no. We do have a really strong feeling on authenticity. And I think that I can see some levels of training that may help with some types of tasks, like some low-level moderation. A lot of moderation is quite complicated and really relies on, I think, human judgment. I think, though, we are lucky at the moment that we are not at the same scale as some of the bigger centralized platforms, because I think those things are difficult to scale. So in the future, maybe we may have to rethink it.
Thank you. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, for sharing. And I used to think that the Fediverse or the activity part was the evolution of Mastodon, but no, I was wrong. And so I'm curious about the whole Fediverse things at two layers. Like at the first layer is that the activity part was established in W3C as a center, and I think that it has been inactive for years. And I wonder that Mastodon has been, I think it is one of the largest implements for the activity part. There are other instances, other implementations out there. As far as I know, because my job happens to be involved in the W3C, I know that in W3C there has been serving as a place for the web standards, it's a place for different browser vendors to sit down to have conversations about different issues or different controversies stuff to make sure they come to agreement or come to consensus of different web advancement standards. But since that the activity part working group has ceased to operate for now, I'm interested to see that does Mastodon has a thinking to have a place either in W3C or other place to have other members in the Fediverse that implement activity part, all stakeholders to sit down to have a feature or have some discussion about how the status. Well, that's on the Fediverse side. Or even the lower side, like many Mastodon instances, we could have the similar place to like they would have got social as a product of the social. We can have some other instances, moderators meet up online, etc. That's what could be one of the possibility, right? And on the other outer layer is that on the decentralized social space beyond activity part, they have Blue Sky, they have their own edge protocols. And even in the crypto space, there's been a Lens protocol or broadcaster that to make sure everything begins in the protocol layer and everyone can build applications on it. But so far, those different protocols don't interoperable with each other. So that could be also a starting point to get people to sit down to have a conversation of how those different philosophy has been evolved and how we could collaborate together to kind of like come back or compete with centralized social as we see today. So what's your view about like these different layers of collaborations, possibilities moving forward on the master?
Well, thank you, Nathan. That's awesome. There's some really good things in there. So you talked about the W3C standards body, what's happened with activity part there, where or how or whether Mastodon is having those conversations, and then about the non-activity part of the world, right? So let's talk about that. So yes, you're right. The activity part working group at the W3C went quiet, went away for a period of time. There has been what's called a community group at the W3C, which doesn't have all of the same abilities in the W3C processes as a working group to sort of set standards and create new things. I've been taking part in some of those meetings now for the last couple of years, occasionally, not regularly. I'm not a good person. I'm not attending all of them, but there's a lot of interest. There's also something another interesting process, which is more similar to the Python community called Fediverse enhancement proposals, which happens in a different community called Activity Pub Rocks. It's like a social pub. It's a discourse forum where people who are building things on Activity Pub and Fediverse talk to one another. So I didn't lie to you when I said Fediverse is all about Activity Pub, but there are other things involved. So when we do a lookup between actors in the Fediverse, we use a protocol or a thing called WebFinger, which is an HTTP call to a well-known file. So there's a load of things that work together to make the Fediverse work. So WebFinger, Activity Pub, Activity Streams is a data format. Activity Pub transport. There's something called node info. Node info is a file that lives in the well-known directory on your server that came from Diaspora, I mentioned earlier. And the idea of that was to sort of give you the ability to query things like statistics, the numbers of active users, what protocols are supported, and things like that. So all of these things come together and work together. But the only thing that's actually standardized is Activity Pub by the W3C. So there is this process called FEP for Fediverse enhancement proposals. Anybody can submit an FEP through an open source repository on Codeberg. There is a discussion process. Through that and either proposals get adopted and used by lots of different projects, or they get abandoned. So if you look at a lot of the Fediverse projects, Mastodon is one of them, they have a text file called federation.mb. Federation.mb is itself defined by a Fediverse enhancement proposal. And it contains a list of the Fediverse enhancement proposals that the project implements, on top of activity and webbing and other things that you need. So the Fediverse has been evolving and moving forward the whole time, even though the Activity Hub working group went away. In the last month, in fact, there was a vote at the Activity Hub community group, the W3C, to re-charter a working group. That's still in a process and hasn't happened fully yet, but that's where we're headed. Right? So we take this. So that is part of the answer. So there has been a process. A lot of it is based on people's activity, people's desire to build new things, right? So when a project adds a new feature, they can either do that and say, here's a Fediverse enhancement proposal, this is what we are doing in quote books on Mastodon. Or they could just go ahead and implement it, and then other platforms can copy it if they wanted to. But then there's no structure to that. So it's kind of almost anarchy. It's not quite anarchy. There's a bit of democratic process in there, but there's a lot of people doing what they want to do, and I think that's very positive and healthy for new ideas, right? Because if we all spend all our time discussing how perfect something is, then we don't build the thing, right? So I think there's a place for new ideas. There's a place for lightweight documentation of how something works and sharing it with other people to see if they like it as well. And then there's the process and full, like, let's get this into more concrete form so people know how to use it. So Activity Hub, and to your question about has Mastodon places where we're talking to other projects. I joined the project 2 years ago, and the first thing I did was create a space for us to privately, but not in a way, I don't mean privately in a way to exclude people, I just mean in a way that we can have smaller, more focused conversations. If we just had a big channel where everybody could ask us all the questions about our roadmap, then we would get a lot of noise and we would struggle to move forward. So what we wanted to do is create a space where we could say to 5 or 10 other Fediverse projects we knew the people on, please come to this space and we can share what we're working on, you can share what we're working on, we can ask each other technical, low-level questions without everybody, all of the users of all of the things asking unrelated questions. So we've had that for a few years, and that's been quite good for us. We had at FOSDEM a social web dev room. So a dev room is kind of like a conference track. So we had that for the first time this year. I think only one of the talks, of I think something like 20 talks, was about Mastodon. The rest of them were Friendica and Funk Whale, and I mentioned the code forges, Gitty. They're adding activity bug support. There was Ghost, the blogging newsletter platform. There was Write Freely, which is another blogging platform. So there were lots of different people all sharing things, and we all learned something. So that was good. That was a good opportunity. So that's the Activity Hub Fediverse. Then you mentioned the other things in the decentralized space. Blue Sky is interesting, I think. It's obviously very popular to a lot of users. At the moment, if the United States leaves the internet, well, there's a lot of bad things will happen with that. But you know, I mean, if Blue Sky's data center goes away, then most of that network is no longer available. They had a thing where they had this idea of personal data stores, so you can host your own bit of your data, but without their front end, what they call the app view that they run, you can't do anything. So they are not very decentralized. There is a bridge that is called Bridgefed, which enables you on Mastodon to see Blue Sky users if they opt in, and Blue Sky users to see Mastodon users if they opt in. And again, that's opt-in because it's important for especially people on the Activity Pub Fediverse to feel respected, feel that their data is not being scraped. We're not just going and grabbing all your stuff and putting it over here. I can choose to bridge myself. So I know Ryan and Anusha and that team, and they're wonderful people, and they built a really nice bridge. So that's part of the interoperability. There are problems. One of the problems is Blue Sky Postlink is different to Mastodon Postlink. What do? Do you put a link? Do you cut it in half? How do we figure that out? So that's solved. You mentioned Farcaster and other protocols. I'm not sorry, yes, thank you. I'm not so familiar with them, I'll be honest with you. I've spent a lot less time with those things. I know you're very familiar with that space. So I don't feel confident discussing them very much because I don't have as much. There is a GitHub repository called Awesome DeSo, D-E-S-O, Decentralized Social, which have listed a bunch of events that are happening this year, and they have divided it by protocol, Lens, Activity Pub, 80 Pros, and so on. So there are people tracking what's happening, who is talking, what the opportunities are to talk to one another. My sense is that we're all very busy with our own things. I went to a workshop at Princeton University at the beginning of last year, and we had Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Nostr in the same room with that workshop. So there are times where we come together and have some conversations. But yeah, I think we've been focusing on our own things, really. And the protocols and the data formats are quite different. So there's a lot more work to do. I have a view that Blue Sky's got great user experience because it's very similar to Twitter. I'm concerned about its current lack of decentralization, actual decentralization. I think they need to do a lot more there. I think that Activity Pub's been around for nearly, over 10 years, and it's doing really well. It's got a really healthy ecosystem, very mixed, diverse ecosystem of different services, and it works pretty well. That's my view on all of it. But my role is to develop relationships with it. No longer there. At Mastodon is that I'm here to make those connections with people and talk to different groups. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning the Fediverse enhancement proposal. I was in great.
Oh, great.
So that's very active.
Yeah, that is very.
It
is, yes.
That and to recap of another things you mentioned that in W50 there's a community group for the social web. I think it's social web.
It's incubator. That's the one, yes.
Community group, right? And I had to find out that the chair is the man called Dimitri, and I happened to meet him in person last year because he's also an active contributor in the credential community group and decentralized identity identifiers working group.
Yes.
So because of my job, I happened to meet him in person. I've known that he's also in person this year in RubyConf, so probably later.
Oh, he's in person.
Yeah, so probably in the following days we could pin him.
Yeah, no,
we probably could have a chance to be present.
That'd be great.
Discuss about the progress.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. I didn't know that Dimitri was here as well. Yes. So the community group is what we're hoping to evolve back into a working group in the future. It's happening. It may not always be visible, but it's the thing. I think we all have our own interests. Right? I go up and get really interested in 3D printing or something different. I don't always then keep up with every mailing list.
Yeah, sure. Connections involved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Touch the following days of the RubyConf.
Thank you. The reason I closed my laptop was because it was running out of power and I had to plug it. It's fine. Not to hide it.
question? Oh, okay.
Go on.
Maybe next question. Maybe it's a stupid question, but I didn't use method very much, but the Fediverse, this word, also I have heard first time when you
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So, but I just think about some maybe possible or it's already or is already functional in Mastodon. For example, I know some Rubysters they have a account in Ruby.social.
Yes.
Yeah, if I have posted my own Mastodon, can I follow them
Yes.
in my self-hosted Mastodon?
Yes.
Oh, this is Mastodon's function or Fediverse's function or anything.
The way that people sometimes talk about it is you can have a Hotmail address and someone else can have a Gmail address, and you can still send each other messages, right? Just because the domain is different, you can still talk. So if you have your own server, so let's say I'm not going to try to think of how to describe it. If you have your own Mastodon server and you have your own account on that server, you can still follow anyone on any Mastodon server unless the server or the user has blocked you.
Oh,
right? Now, you might be blocked for reasons that a bunch of Japanese teenagers decided to create a load of spam, and therefore we started blocking lots of instances that had been hijacked because they were outdated and they'd been creating these accounts. So we ended up blocking a lot of domains that were bad domains. So anybody, once that spam wave stopped, if those domains are not unblocked, then the users on those instances will not be able to follow anyone else, see anyone else. But generally speaking, like normal behavior, there are a few servers and instances that everybody blocks because they are known to have unpleasant content on. We don't want to engage with. But broadly speaking, you create a new instance, and the way it works, when that first wet finger request happens, you go and ask the other server, do you know Andy Piper? You're on McCall.social. Do you know Andy Piper at McCall.social? And my server will say, yes, here is all of this information. And your server will then make an account for me or make a page for me. So you're on your server will be your server domain / at Andy Piper at McCall.social, and I will show up there. And every new post I make from then on will be published to them and show up there. So you can follow them wherever they are. And the same happens if I'm on PeerTube. I have an account called Andy Piper at makertube.net. That's the PeerTube instance I'm on. It's for people that make things, electronics and 3D printing. And you can follow Andy Piper at makertube.net from your Mastodon account. And my new videos will start showing up in your timeline. So that's exactly how it works.
so if I have my self-hosted Mastodon,
Yes.
all new people coming to my Mastodon, if I can make my own host Mastodon default follow list. For example, we follow you.
Yes.
Follow Max.
Yeah.
The other individual
Yes.
instance. When new people coming to my Mastodon, they can see the maybe Spotify I can call it default follow list.
So there's they would choose to, so you can have recommended accounts that you as the administrator of your Mastodon can recommend to follow.
Oh.
What we don't have, although we don't have built into Mastodon, someone has built, is what they have on Blue Sky, which is called starter packs. And I think starter packs is a brilliant idea on Blue Sky, because what it means is you can say, I want to follow a load of Ruby developers, or I want to follow a load of people in developer relations, or I want to follow a bunch of human rights people, and there is a list, and you click follow all of those people. The problem with it on Blue Sky is that there is no way to have yourself taken the list. So I cannot say, I don't like that you put me in a list called bad people or people from Britain who didn't vote for Brexit, right? So, which could be a source of harassment, right? So I can't remove myself from those. So that is, I think, a problem with that. Somebody has built a Fediverse equivalent. It's called, it's on a website called devs.com. They've got a section in there called starter packs, and you can create a starter pack, and you can find out which starter pack you've been added to as well if you sign in with your Mastodon account. So that's kind of similar. So that's another thing you could suggest, and use people that signed up. You could send them an email to say, hey, we saw you signed up for my cool new instance. Once they've signed up and they've already seen the recommended accounts and that they can then choose to follow, you can't automatically have them follow those accounts. It would be a recommendation for them to click through. And then you could also, if you wanted to, send them an email after sign up to say, and by the way, there's this website over here with a bunch of recommendations for place for starter packs, for example. So that might be a way of helping. The other cool thing I think about Mastodon is that you can follow hashtags. Not just users, so you can follow topics. And I think that's really, really useful. You then just suddenly discover people talking about photography or skiing that you didn't know.
Close yesterday.
No.
Oh.
No, unless, so it's complicated. Because of the way the federation works, if the messages end up on your instance under that hashtag from another instance, because someone on your instance follows that user or that hashtag, or that user, then they may show up. But generally speaking, hashtag it's the same as search. It's limited to your instance. So for RightsCon, I created what's called a Fedi wall. So if any of you have been around the internet for as long as me, when Twitter started, you would go to a conference and there would be a big screen with a wall of Twitter signs from different people. Somebody has built this thing called Fediwall. I think it's written in JavaScript. And you can configure it. And you can say, go and look at these 10 Mastodon instances and these 3 hashtags and give me a wall of all of those posts. So I made one for RightsCon. I think it follows 3 RightsCon hashtags, the RightsCon conference organizers. And I think I picked 10 or 15 popular big Mastodon instances, because the chances are that those Mastodon instances will know about the smaller ones already as well. And so you can see this kind of visual web page wall of all the posts related to RightsCon, which I think is cool.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So, this decentralization is very powerful. I wonder, is the potential for Mastodon Fediverse to penetrate the Great Wall of China, or has it infiltrated?
I do not know. I don't know if it has. We went to an event on Sunday, RightsCon French event like this one, which was about Tor. And being here at RightsCon has made me think very carefully and very hard and very seriously. I was already thinking about decentralization for data sovereignty generally, but it's making me think much more about the opportunity for these technologies and these platforms to enable much more freedom for people to self-organize, to access things locally in ways that is appropriate for them. I don't know anything about what is happening on the other side of the Great Firewall. Whether there are anybody who's experimenting with Mastodon or using it. Everything is federated at the domain level. So if you can see a domain, and that domain is not blocking you in the Mastodon instance, then they can talk to one another. I suspect that there's a lot of things happening on the other side of the Great Firewall we can't see. So, but I don't know if anybody's using it there. So I'd be really interested to learn. Really interested. That's a great question. I think there's a lot of opportunity for self-hosted fund services generally, but I don't know what would happen with it because I've just learned recently that there is a lot of difficulty in operating Tor nodes in my home country, which surprised me. And I can imagine that self-hosting any kind of thing might be a problem in some countries, or might be detected and asked to be taken down or forcibly taken down. So don't know. Really good question.
Thanks for it.
Okay. Probably my final question, I would say,
Maybe the first of your 10 final questions.
yeah. I just would like to express the current status of Taiwan's virtual market shares. It's interesting that the main task solution, including the Facebook and the Threads, are quite popular here in Taiwan.
I just said that.
And yeah, that's sometimes it's weird to me, but as I dig deeper into that, economists are very like to use the social for fun. So if you use the tools for fun, use the social networks for fun, Facebook and the Threads is the way to go. But on the countryside, contrary, like as engineers myself, we follow engineers from different parts of the world, and engineers used to use Twitter a lot. And so, like as a iOS app developer myself, I follow lots of developers out there, and most of those developers has moved to Mastodon even before Twitter became X, or even before Blue Sky was the thing. They are all moved to Mastodon and even different businesses, not just Mastodon.
Yes.
And that's quite good. But in Taiwan, many engineers doesn't follow the trend. Many engineers here is still using Facebook or like various for connection so far. That's also weird to me too. I don't know what happened, but I think there's one interesting probably a good starting point to let us alone to have a penetration opportunity here is that we have very strong open source community here in Taiwan. Like we have a conference called Host Hub. It's a conference for open source coders, users, and promoters, and it has been held since 2006. So it's almost 20 years, and I personally grew up on that community too. And it's been held in the summer, August for almost 20 years, and we already started to have connection with not just Gulf Zero, but also Open Culture Foundations, and probably later we could have more connections with the Coast Cup staff, because for the past few years, I've seen many talks who shared about the experience of interacting with the Fediverse. So there are already lots of open source contributors, engineers being very interested in this area. I think probably this year will be a good timing to let me connect with them to make sure if we could arrange a talk either in person or online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. So let me tell you, I met your friends from the OCF because I knew I was coming to RubyCon and I wanted to learn more about Taiwan. And they gave a nice little workshop at FOSDEM about using chopsticks, and then they told us a little bit about the geography of Taiwan and culture. And it was really nice. It was really wonderful. And then I later went to say hello to the stand. They gave me, please forgive me, I forget the name, the green snack for safety. Your green chip snack. Huh? Wait. Yeah, quite. Yes. So they gave, I got a take a pack. Quite home with me. My wife and I really enjoyed that, but I know that we were supposed to put it on the computer to keep it safe, right? So no, I had a really nice time, and they mentioned Costco. They had a nice leaflet of all the events and things. And then yesterday, when I was finalising my talk, I found a post on Social Pub that we were just talking about, the MVP place, from somebody who was giving a talk at Costco about Fediverse. And I thought, well, that's really cool. So someone's already done a talk last year or the year before. So that's really exciting. Thank you. Yeah. I was on a panel at Foxconn this morning with a lady from Meta, and she said that she'd also learned that Threads is popular here. I wonder, I don't know why it would be, it's fine. I find it frustrating. I don't use this anymore, but when I was actually using it, I would find it frustrating because it's just Instagram, only with text. And that means that everything is out of order. And I would see a post from 2 days ago today, which I don't find useful anymore, or at all, really, because they were just not timely. It didn't make sense to me. I have friends who work at Meta. I have friends who work on Threads. I have former colleagues who went to work on Threads. But they haven't fully integrated with Fediverse. I find that quite frustrating. It's a big company, they're moving slowly. And a lot of people in Fediverse are not at all happy because we come from a different angle, from a place where their identities were threatened in big tech and other platforms, and it's their right to block threads and choose not to engage with that. I think that's entirely fair. So that makes me sad as well, because it means that there is a group of people that may be blocked by people on Mastodon or on Mastodon instances, because those instances are saying, no, we don't want anything to do with threads. And if all of our Taiwanese friends are on threads, we can't, even if they are in a federation, we can't see one another because they get blocked. So it would be lovely to see more people on Fediverse. So I find it, like you, I find it really curious. A long time ago, in my past life, when I was at Twitter, I did an event in Israel. This was, I think, in something like 2014. And nobody there used Twitter. They all wanted to connect to me be my friend on Facebook, which I found very odd, because I used Facebook at that time for people I had met, actual friends, not random people I had met at a conference. The same thing happened in Romania. I went to an event in Romania in 2014, and they said, well, at Twitter, you think Romania doesn't exist. You can't geolocate my posts in Romania because the database, the Twitter location database in 2014, didn't have any places for Romania. So they couldn't check in posts to say they were, because their data was from 10 years ago from the US, because it's a US company. So I think that the point of me saying is, I think that in these cases, we would not have had that in Romania with Twitter if they could run their own copy of Twitter for their own community, and they wouldn't be pushing everybody to use Facebook. I think that, but at the same time, they should have a choice. They should be allowed. It's the open source way, and the way of democratic human behavior is that we all decide our own destiny. We all make our own choices. I think that's incredibly important. So I would love more people in Taiwan to be using the Fediverse so that I can communicate with them. I've had a great time communicating with you on other channels. It's been really, really nice to have that opportunity. It's always fascinating how different countries and cultures adopt different things at different times. It's also good because it means that we are not one single US-driven monoculture, that everybody does the same thing. Whew. Thank you.
I think it is the most interactive event around the festival.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. To let me have this chance to invite you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, great talk. I'm very grateful for with such a small community can have such interaction. It's very rare in technical community.
Well, also, I appreciate that we're speaking in English, and I value that. I appreciate that. I appreciate your patience and your willingness to talk with me. It's been really, really nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Okay.